I forgot your name, John. You're John too.
Oh, yeah. I am John, too.
Okay,
That's right.
brother.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Yep. Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. Host JP John Paz with me today. Very special guest. You may know him as the Big Viking or the Berzerker from the WWF. He's, of course, Nord the Barbarian, John Nord. Welcome in. How you doing?
Thanks, John. Hey, I'm impressed. You remembered both my wrestling names.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yeah. God, what a superstar I was, huh? I'm just joking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's good to talk to you. I don't mind doing these deals and kind of if you do these podcasts, you kind of feel better after you get them. You know, it kind of gives you a little boost of energy for some reason. So
Absolutely. So what's going on in
yeah,
your world? What are you doing? Anything wrestling related?
wrestling. Yeah, I'm starting to do more of these shows, and I did. Well, I'm doing this Las Vegas WrestleCon, and then I'm doing WrestleCon in the week later in Indianapolis, and then I don't know. I'm going out to New Jersey, your neck of the woods,
Nice.
for some guy that, and I forgot his name. So yeah, I'm picking up a few bucks, but I'm glad I'm going out to Vegas because I'm going to do a podcast with Jake Roberts. Jake's my old running buddy. We got some miles together. And when I first broke in, actually, in '85, I broke in '84, but Jake I met in Mid-South, and we were on the road together day and night. We were tag partners, and God, we had some fun. We really had some fun back then. And then that's WrestleCon. Then the week later is Indianapolis, and I ain't doing a podcast there, but I'm supposed to meet Undertaker too in Vegas, so I'll see how that goes. I haven't seen him for so many years, and I talked to him, and I'm supposed to cruise over to his show or whatever he's doing. So, and say hi to him, and especially I haven't seen him for 30 some years, and then yeah, so I'm kind of excited, but we'll see. I'm yeah, I'm excited about seeing them too, big time. Big time. They are my buddies from way past, and I got some stories I got to be careful I can't tell. Is really
Whoa,
that's what I was just thinking about. I thought, fuck me and my big mouth. Excuse my language. Me and my big mouth. If I start telling stories with them two guys, I got to be careful. Got to be careful. You know, you got ex-wives, you got wives, you got kids, you know, and they're not real bad or nothing like that, but they're just bad enough to be why did I tell that, you know? So yeah, so I'm getting around, and I got a right leg I almost lost last year, and I got a bad infection in my right knee, and so I'm still fighting that, but at least they were actually talking about amputating my leg. So I was really freaked out for a lot of months. I was in a different cast 4 times, and they saved my leg. And I kind of limp on it, and it's really a bad, shitty knee, and the infection kind of wrecked it. But it's still good. I'm grateful as heck I didn't lose it. That's all I really wanted. I just didn't want to lose my leg. So,
oh my God.
Anyways, yeah. With that being the case, I'm living here in Minnesota still, and it's where I've always lived. And God, my kids, I got 2 kids. My son was a wrestling coach for Columbia, and he's out in New York. and he switched jobs just this year to, I don't know, whatever his job is. And then I got a daughter out there too, that is really always has a good job, and it's always she's a workhorse. She's a great girl, and she just is. I don't know. I think she works for Zillow or Spotify or one of these big companies. I don't know. But anyways, and my other daughter's a doctor here in at one of the hospitals. So got 3 great kids, and yeah, good to be doing good. And I'm glad to get out to these shows. I didn't ever want to do them till just maybe the last 4 years or something, and then all of a sudden you start doing them, and you kind of feel good if you can travel on the plane, which I haven't done much the last couple of years, but now that I can bend my leg enough to sit on the plane, I can go to these. So
nice. Now,
yeah,
going all the way back to WWF, and I feel like so many people know you as the Berserker, obviously, the wrestling figure, just so memorable in that gimmick and that character. When you first got there, how does that journey begin? Like, how did you get there? How does Vince contact you? How did you I know it's early 1991, but how does that even happen?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you how that happened is they called me out of nowhere, and I had Kurt Hennig put in a word for me that John wanted to go back to wrestling, because I was just selling cars at my dad's car lot. I was always doing good then, and I didn't have to travel. But anyways, they called me out of nowhere, Pat Patterson, and said, there's a movie part in LA that we want you to go to and try out. And I said, really? Okay. So what it was one of Hogan's movies, and me and Undertaker all of a sudden run into each other out there at a hotel in LA, and I didn't practice for the part or nothing. So I blew it anyways, but then Mark ended up getting the part, the Undertaker, whatever that was, Suburban Commando or something. No,
yeah,
was that it?
Yep.
And I remember it was kind of cool, man. I got in this room, and this big director, this guy's name was Burt Kennedy, and he's passed away now, but he was like a John Wayne director. He was a big time director. And we were doing these commercials for my dad's car lot where I'd slam a guy through the windshield. And this Los Angeles has kind of gotten wind about it. And they said, God, we heard you do some unbelievable commercials. I said, you guys have heard about our car lot commercials, really? And it was kind of cool. We had a candy glass windshield on an 85 Buick Riviera, and I remember it cost $2,000 when I did the commercial, the windshield, and I would pick the guy up and say, no credit, we don't care. No down payment, we still don't care. And then I would say, don't make your payment. And then I would power slam the guy through the windshield and say, don't make your payment. That's right. Then we care. So, and it really caught on. It was 1987 October, and the Vikings, we played it during the Minnesota Vikings games. And, man, the next thing I know, that Monday morning we played the commercials. There was like 150 people at the car lot. Not necessarily to buy a car, but to just see, God, what the deal is about this. This is unbelievable. We've never seen a guy slam a guy through a windshield, and it kind of made me feel good. So that's probably one of my best memories about being, Nord the Barbarian and slam a guy, and it got really popular for a while. We were even on Charles Kuralt Sunday morning what they call that, CBS Sunday Morning. Anyway, so it was kind of cool. It was really hot for a while. But then I went to, how I got the job as, I guess in wrestling, I never really looked for a job unless it was easy. But even Vern Gagne, when I started in '84, I went to wrestling camp, and that's what started you. Once you do that, you don't really gotta pick up the phone. Then usually guys call you. So Vince called me, and then I flew in there after the movie deal part story. I flew in there, and he sat me down, and they said, and Vince and Pat Patterson were there, and they said, well, we heard that when you're told to take a right, you take a left sometimes. And I go, well, yeah, that's true. I said, but that's kind of out of me now, And then, of course, I wanted to get hired. So, they said, what do you feel like doing? I says, I don't know. I feel like I always felt just kind of wild and crazy and all that. And they said, so they made me, you go in this big warehouse. I don't even know where I was. And you got to pick out a helmet and a tunic and a sword. And, and they had all these other, things that you could pick out. And it was like a movie, it was like a movie, it was like a movie thing that you go in and what word am I looking for, John?
Like a movie set, or almost like
like what do you call them? Artifacts and movie stuff. Like that ain't real. Like the furniture and the costumes are called what? They're movie
props. Props.
Props.
There you go. Props. Yep.
Yeah, props. So anyway, so I picked out some stuff, and so then it was up to me that, my debut or whatever, I was the Viking, and there's a guy who had that trademark, and kind of a weird deal. It was a guy that was wrestling in Japan, and he had the Viking trademark. So they had to switch names after I had a couple showings on TV. They had to switch names to the Berzerker, and Vince said, John, we're going to switch your name. Is it okay if we go with the Berzerker? That's a type of Viking. I said, sure. I didn't think it was the greatest name, but what are you going to do when Vince asks you something? You kind of smile and go, sure, it sounds great.
Right.
So, and that's how, so I started, and, and I know Undertaker hadn't been there that long, and I remember chumming with him right away, and of course, our Minnesota guys, we kind of stick together. Kurt Hennig, Barry Darsow, Rick Rude, Mike Hegstrand, Joe Laurinaitis, the list goes on there. But you always had, that's one thing we always had, was the Minnesota guys could stick together and get you a job and help you out and help each other and watch out for each other's back on jobs and stuff like that. So it was always cool having your buddies there, especially your buddies that you went to high school with, like Kurt and Barry and Rude. We're all in the same high school, so it was really a good time working for Vince and having to work with your buddies from high school too. You couldn't have had any more fun,
It is crazy, like all those guys that come from that school. It's like, oh my God, it's like the wrestling hotbed of all hotbeds. It's nuts.
yeah, it's Robbinsdale. So, yeah, and although, like Mike Hegstrand, Mike I grew up with, he didn't go to Robbinsdale, but he was right next door, and me and Mike were good friends, and we were all good friends. It was really, really cool, and it was definitely my best memories are the people. But if you can surround yourself with people that I surrounded myself with, and they surrounded themselves with that from high school. And no matter how bad, sometimes you screw up, you miss a match, you get in a fight, or you get, the list goes on, or you're out drinking all night and you fuck up and all that. At least you got guys backing you up, and most of the time you're not going to get fired over it. So
Right. So the Berserker, like the gimmick, obviously it's like a knockoff of what you were doing with the Viking previously, but and
yeah,
basically kind of like Nord the Barbarian. But
yeah.
when you're the Berserker and Vince is pitching it to you, they always have great stories of Vince, like kind of not overreacting, but he kind of gets himself into the character. Did you have one of those meetings with him where he was like really intense with you about it, or no?
Oh, yeah, Vince is a funny guy. He makes some faces, and yeah, I know what you mean. But with me, no, I mean, I talked to him a few times, and did he get intense? Not really. He likes he likes explaining stuff. You're right. I mean, I guess you would call he was a little intense when him and Pat explained to me about the Berserker, and I just knew this, that I was there to work hard and just and try to stay out of trouble.
Hmm.
you know, a lot of our guys there. One of our first battles was just to stay out of trouble. Me and Mike Hegstrand, Mike, me and him got together, and we'd go off the map. We go out drinking all night, and you know, be be careful we didn't get in trouble too much is all we get. So we did most of the time not get in trouble, but it was hard because as long as the booze was there, and shit, you go back to your hotel room every night. We were working 200 nights a year. Go back to your hotel room and, geez, what am I going to do? Sit and watch Johnny Carson, or am I going to go down to the hotel bar and start drinking? Geez, I think I'll go down to the hotel bar.
Yep.
And next thing you know, you're doing shots with Blair, and you're doing, you know, and it was all in good fun, but you just had to be careful, man.
What did you think of working Undertaker back then? Obviously, everyone remembers that feud and the sword, and you basically trying to kill him. But what did you think about that feud with the Undertaker?
I I loved it because we were in Toledo, Ohio, and they asked the Undertaker, and they said, well, I think he was kind of having a hard time having good matches because he was moving so slow, and now people are kind of like, boy, it takes forever to get to the ring. And then the ring, he moves slow. Well, I was kind of compliment, I thought, towards him, because then I could just fly around and be crazy and kind of compliment him. And they asked him, who can you have a good match with? And he said, John Nord. And so that tripled my pay. And I'm grateful for him to this date that he said that. So then they put me on TV that night, and Pat came up and said, could you get that sword to stick in the ring if you got to? I says, you're damn right I can, if that's what you want. So that was the big thing, as Mark moved, and I gotta, if it looks lame and the sword don't go in the mat, it's gonna look kind of shitty. So, but it did. So yeah, I was kind of, it's a good memory I got. I'm glad, and it was a good feud. Shit, I must have wrestled him 100 nights that year, um, and we just, it was a lot of, it was good. It was easy, but you got to remember, the big thing is, if you go from, this opening match or one of the first three matches to main event, or semi-main event, your pay triples. So all of a sudden, instead of making I don't know, 150 a year. I was making 300, So I'm always grateful to the Undertaker for putting in the work for me.
The stabbing thing is so funny because and it's so memorable because you never see that in pro wrestling. Like a guy literally, with a giant sword trying to kill the other guy, and pretty
I
nuts.
know. I've had a lot of guys tell me, like, when they were little, they kind of didn't think it was real, and then all of a sudden that sword, the way it stuck in the mat, then that kind of scared them that it was maybe real. And what you just said, John, is what, yeah, and it kind of, it makes me feel good because it makes me know that I did my job. I did my job. That was a good, it was a good feud, and I had a good, I just had good matches with them. I always thought, uh, and they were pretty rough matches. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Mark, there's a lot easier guys to wrestle than me because my kicks were probably going to be a little harder, and the chairs always came out, and you waffle each other with them chairs as hard as you can, and next thing you know, you're going, God, man, this is. There's easier guys to wrestle than John Nord, so. But that made me feel good. And Mark and Undertaker's my buddy to this day. I don't talk to him much anymore, but I think I'm going to see him in Vegas, so I'm kind of excited about that.
When you look at, like you said, like your style or how you're wrestling, was that somewhat of an homage? Obviously, you did the Huss Huss too. Was that an homage to Bruiser Brody?
Yeah, it was, and I met Frank in Japan in '85, and became good friends with him, and not super good friends, but just good friends. And uh, he wanted to, he wanted to, he wanted to tag up with me. And he lives in New Mexico. I live in Minnesota, and not necessarily in Japan. Because he had his own deal in Japan, and he's a legend over there, and he's making 14 grand a week, I think, when I met him, and I had never known anybody to make that much money. But Frank was, and then we would wrestle each other in a lot of small shows in the United States in the '80s, and wrestle against each other. But yeah, even if we wrestled each other, it was still going to be interesting because here you got the two crazy guys going Huss, and yeah, it was I guess it was a tribute to Frank. He was a great guy, and he was just a great athlete, and I got nothing but good things to say about Frank. God bless his soul.
Were you guys supposed to team up in WWF? Was that rumor true at all?
Yep.
That you guys were going to go there and team up together?
Yep. Yeah, we had he sent me a letter in I think it was right around, I think it was March of '88, and they said we can offer you and Frank 250,000 each. You got to work 150 days a year. And I remember just saying, and then I called Frank. I says, Frank, did you get this letter? And he said, yeah. And I said, I'm thinking, God, can we do this? And he said, I can't expect him. He wasn't somebody that was going to just move and just work for Vince. And he was making 14 grand a week in Japan. And that's not even counting, I guess you would say. I know he had believe it or not, he had a cartoon they were starting to make in Japan of him. And he had that going. at the time. And so I never even called the WWF back, but I still got the letter from them, and I got offers on that letter, and my kids won't give it to me, so they got it locked away somewhere. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Frank, back then you got to remember it was like 1988. It was like, oh wow, no, this ain't gonna work. Throw that letter away. It just wasn't a big deal. But Frank would have did it if they would have offered more money. It just wasn't enough. If they would have offered even $100,000 more, like 350, I think Frank would have did it. And because he 100% trusted me. I was the young guy that just did what the boss said, which Frank was. He was a ring general. He was the guy in the ring that whatever Frank wanted in the ring, most of the time guys were going to get. And if you know what I mean, I just mean Frank was a ring general, and I was the perfect guy for him because I was his friend. He knew, he trusted me all the way. So it would have been a cool deal, but it kind of sucked that I wish he would have been able to do it, but somehow he just wasn't gonna. It didn't make sense to him. So
obviously that doesn't hurt your withstanding years later with Vince, though. You know what I mean? Not being able to sign in '88, then they signed you in '91. So obviously didn't hurt you maybe in '88, right, but it didn't hurt you in your future with that.
No, it didn't. And I was somebody that kind of, I don't know, this is what guys have told me, like, John, you never really took pro wrestling very serious. And that sounds kind of strange, but I know what they mean when they tell me that, because, Kurt used to tell me that, and Brad Rangens and Barry Darsow, because that was all their full-time jobs. I always had my dad's car lot where I could, if it just sucked on the road too much and it just was not worth the money, traveling that many miles for that much money, I always could go to the car lot and make, good money. And that was the catch. And my buddies couldn't do that. And they always told me that. They go, John, you always had that car lot behind you. And we never did. And I said, yeah, that's true, you guys. I never thought about it back then, but looking back, I always had two jobs, and I was grateful because I had a backup job always.
Yes. So. Yep. Now, what did you think about when you're there, obviously WWF stuff, what did you think about Bret the Hitman Hart? Because you worked him when he was IC champ, you worked him when he was the world champ. What did you think about the Hitman at that point?
Yeah, I love the Hitman. Bret's a great guy. I travel with him. I worked with him once before I left there, and I know that they had just given him the belt and all that, and he what was it? Yeah, you know what, I was kind of, I don't know what you mean when you ask what I thought of him. What do you mean?
Like wrestling wise, did you think he was a good worker? A lot of people say he's maybe the best worker ever. So what did you think about him in ring?
What I think about him, you know what, he was a great worker, a great worker. Was he Kurt Hennig? No. And you got to remember, Bret wasn't that big a guy, and always, I'm sure he's heard that many times, and I'm sure, if he heard me saying this, he would, not like it. But he was, but I always thought he was. I don't know if I thought he was big enough to carry the load, but Vince did, and I always thought it was, like Stu Hart, Brett's dad, I always thought that they had a lock contract, like on on uh, on giving Jim Neidhart and Brett and Owen all jobs, and the contract's locked in, so you got to give my son, that type of deal. That's what I thought it was, but then I found out it really wasn't. So I don't know, but I love Brett. He's a great guy. He was into wrestling very seriously, and I never was. And I don't mean that egotistically. So I just wasn't. But I love Bret Hart. He's a great guy. Traveled with him a lot.
Do you think Hennig is the greatest worker like that you knew?
I gotta say, God, I gotta say yes. I didn't know nobody. Kurt was so athletic. I remember. Well, I played football at Montana State, and Kurt played in a junior college football out of high school at Normandale Community College, and I went and watched him play a game, and he was all over the field. He must have made 15 solo tackles. I mean, Kurt Hennig, and Kurt's problem most of the time was he didn't work out enough when he was young. He was always, I love Kurt because he was just like me. We were about the most important thing was having fun. And I worked out more than him. He didn't really like it till he got older. Then he worked out a lot. But when he was young, out of high school and with Vern, he didn't have that. He didn't have that muscle look to carry the ball all the way, and then he blossomed into just, So I think a lot of people would agree with me that Kurt probably was. I don't know of anybody better than Kurt in the ring. No way.
Now, as far as star power, though, the Hulkster, obviously Hulk Hogan, one of the biggest, if not the biggest of all time. Very interesting.
Yep.
You did get to wrestle him in WWF kind of under the radar a little bit. I know Hogan and Savage teamed up in early '92 and wrestled you and Jake the Snake. I feel like that's not really like a really well-known match, but it's awesome that you were in there with Hulk, in that period in WWF.
Yeah, I think it was Amarillo, Texas.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yep.
You know what? I'll tell you, when I was young and when I was with Vern in '86, I remember Hogan coming up to me and saying, "You're my man. Anytime you want to come to WWF, we'll do a hell of a program," And so I was kind of, and a few guys told me, like, Hogan definitely wants to wrestle with you and make some money. And I had a few guys come up to me, and that really was great. I was excited, but then somehow somehow it just, the stuff like that just sort of this wayside, and it ain't, different circumstances, different times, and I don't know. It would have been good. I wish I would have, but I just wasn't one of these guys that were calling Hogan and kind of, brown nosing him and this and that. And I just not that I'm acting macho. I'm just saying I just didn't think about doing anything like that. Maybe if I would have, maybe I would have wrestled them more. I don't know, but
you seem like you could have been a good Hogan opponent, like like the big monster heel that he worked and made so much money with. It seemed like just that one match could have been more. You know what I mean? Like Berzerker Hulk or John Nord Hulk. It definitely seems like a moneymaker.
Yeah, it would have been. And back in the mid '80s, when Hogan was wrestling these big giant guys, like who Bundy and who else were some of them huge guys
One Man
and
Gang,
Hogan.
Kamala,
Yeah,
Boss Man, Andre.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and it was good stuff. He was hot, man, and the Hulkster was the man. If you wanted a favor from the Hulk, from Hogan, and he wanted to do you a favor, all he was a conversation away with Vince, and you were going to get it, and that's how it was, and that was cool. I just never asked him. I was just happy doing what I was doing. I figured Hogan will come to me if he needs it. But he was the biggest, greatest money maker of all time. And he was great. He was super, and he was a great guy, and is a great guy. But he just, but nobody's going to move in the ring like Kurt Hennig. So it's a little different dropping a big leg and then pinning a guy than Kurt bouncing all over the ring every night. It's a lot harder on your body when you take all them big bumps and you pay for it later. Ooh.
Oh yeah, big time.
So that's why Hulkster's in the condition he's in. He's in good shape still, although he's had back surgeries. I get all that. But he did bounce around for guys. They bounced for him. So,
yeah, absolutely. When you look at it too, I mean, Hulk is just huge name. Do you contribute more Hulk creating WWF and making it into a monster, or Vince? That old argument, like, did Vince
yeah.
McMahon do it, or Hulk?
I think if it went to Ben Hulk, it would have been somebody else. Yeah. Vince just he was so polished on making it a spectacular entertainment deal that I think if it wouldn't have been Hogan, it would have been somebody else. However, Hulkster did a hell of a job. He was the man. I shouldn't say that so easily, but because I know what you mean, the vitamins and take your vitamins and how big he was and how athletic he was. I get all that. But I still say with Vince, I'm sure Hogan will be the first to tell you if it wasn't him, it would have probably been somebody else that got just as hot as he was.
What did you think of Vince, though? Did you think genius and like you got along with him well, or did you think he was nutty, or like obviously his stuff today coming out a little bit nutty, but
yeah, you know what? I thought most of them guys were nutty out east. I mean not out east, but I mean in the office. Pat, Vince, this guy, that guy, the referees. They were all kind of odd to me. We're Midwest guys that kind of talk Midwest talk, and I got out there and I was like, wow, these guys are they're just a little different. But yeah, Vince is kind of a weird guy. Is he a good guy? I think he's a great guy. He got a lot of guys jobs that would have never. Fuck, they would have been working at the hardware store. Who knows?
Yep.
And Vince got them all jobs, got me a job. So I got nothing. I think Vince is awesome, and he's super smart, but he's kind of the mad scientist, super smart. He's but he never disrespected me or anything, and he always would listen to the guys in the back locker room. And I remember when my daughter was born. She was born July 31st, 92, and they sent my wife a gold teething ring, for babies. And I thought that was so damn nice. That was really nice. I didn't expect them to send me a present. So there you go for Vince. He didn't have to do that. I was shocked he even remembered I told him. I think we were in Los Angeles. Yeah, we were. July 31st, 92. We were in L.A. and I went out to him in the back room. I said, "Yeah, I had a baby girl, Vince." "Oh, really good." Vince talks very good. And next thing I know, my wife gets this team ran. And I just talked to her. She's my ex-wife, but I just talked to her a couple weeks. I said, "Really? We got a gold cheater?" I says, "God, I don't remember that good, but I do now." And then I says, "God, what's that?" And she, I don't know, it's like it's worth a couple grand, So
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it was. It was damn nice of him, and that's what won me over to Vince. I walked up to him and said, "I had a baby girl," and then he actually remembered, took the time to send that. Damn nice.
Yeah, very nice. What do you think the high point of WWF was? I know you're part of the dark match. You're part of SummerSlam '92 at Wembley, which was a big match with Tonka. Part of Royal Rumble '92 for the title, which ends up being Ric Flair's big title win. Royal Rumble '93. What do you think was the big high water mark for you highlighting WWF?
Oh, I don't know. You know what? This Battle Royale I won, that kind of surprised me, and that might have been the hype, but I think just working with the Undertaker and having them matches every night and just having, I would say just working with Mark, the Undertaker on them 92 matches and just knowing I was making enough money to pay off my car to, God, that was stuff I had never done before. I had never had my car paid off. I always had my car payments, and I was just so grateful to be making that good of money. And, God, I remember that was a high point, I guess, just taking care of my family, because how I was and am is I used to think, boy, when that check came from Titan Sports every 2 weeks, I was like, God, we're doing it. I'm paying my bills, honey. We're doing this together, It was like I'm here. I always gave my wife all my money, I says, "Here, take all of this and pay the bills and let's keep going." So that was the best feeling I had.
So you have your exit basically in February of '93. Why did you leave WWF? What was the issue?
Hang on. Yep. Oh, the name of the car. Hang on, let's see. Otto, thank you. Otto, thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Why did you leave WWF in '93?
I wasn't making that great of money. And it was like I was saying earlier, John, I go sell cars and make $100 grand, 150. No, actually I was making 140 selling cars. So why would I want to go on the road and make 200? It was just so miserable. And I wasn't, now I would have loved pro wrestling the way some guys just loved it, which is a compliment, I just didn't, my mind didn't work that way. I got kind of sick of it. I just went, oh, well, enough of this shit. I want to be home, And somebody like Bret Hart, Undertaker, they just could do it day in and day out and enjoy it. Was it hard work? Hell yes, they busted their ass for all them years, but they were able to just like that profession so much, they were able to keep going. I love pro wrestling, but I didn't love it the way them guys did. They really love it still, and I just never,
That was the passion.
Maybe if I had a different gimmick, like I was a secret agent or something cool, it would have been different. But would be wild and crazy and run around. But I did. That's one thing of the Berzerker deal is I knew one thing where I was different than some guys is I had to go out there and bust my ass, and that ain't talking like great me. I just mean I knew I had to go out there and bust ass. I wasn't just going to go out there and walk down the aisle real slow, and that's the difference, You wonder, like guys, like even I heard the Undertaker say it. He said, "Well, listen, I was able to last this long because I could walk down the aisle slowly. I moved slow in the ring. Was he a great wrestler? Yeah, great, one of the greatest. But your body's going to hold up one hell of a lot easier than if you do like my gimmick where I bounce around, or Kurt Hennig, the way he bounced around. Kurt bounced around more than anybody, and I never, his body was pretty shot before he passed away, and that's the difference that guys have got to realize. Like when you start talking, now Bret Hart, you got to remember how he lasted. He did bounce around a lot. He did work his ass off, but Bret's also a smaller guy, and he's going to be able to pull it off one hell of a lot easier than bigger guys. And he knows that anyways,
Absolutely. It's interesting too, like the connection, obviously with WWF and stuff throughout your career, but the connection you had with Donald Trump because you technically played for, I guess it's the New Jersey Generals, right, for the USFL.
Yep. I'm on the roster. You can check. I wasn't there for pictures. So I had some guys come up to me. Whoa, I didn't see your picture on the team picture. I said, yeah, I wasn't there that day. But you can Google the roster of it because I checked it once. And yeah, so you know what? Here it was. The first year of the Generals was owned by a guy named Walter Duncan. He was a rich oil guy. And Trump bought it from him in 84. So I met Trump once in the locker room, and he was buying it from Walter Duncan. It's the only reason. But, he was still a famous guy, but he was buying it from the guy who owned it in 1983. Anyways, long story short, I met him in the locker room, and he signed me a USFL football, and I still got that, so I'm kind of proud of that.
Nice. That's very cool. I know. I know, like wrestling wise, when you look at like the end of your career, basically, you did have some runs in All Japan Pro Wrestling when All Japan Pro Wrestling was like the place to be. Just absolutely crazy how popular it was. Was that kind of just winding it down? Were you looking to like just wind it down? You probably got a good amount from that tour.
Stan Hansen. It was a Thanksgiving night, 1993 Thanksgiving night, and I was sitting there and I was selling cars at home, and Stan called me at home and said, "Hey, All Japan wants to hire you as my take partner," and I said, "Well, hell yeah, when is it?" And he said, "January 1st. So I was not in good shape, and I don't like showing up in bad shape. So I remember how hard I worked out for a month. And then I started January 94, I think. And, but anyway, so I was Stan's partner for a while. And then over there, I could have kept going to Japan. I was making $57.50 a week, which ain't Hall of Fame money, but it's still damn good, almost $6,000 a week, So coming home with them $100 bills is really cool, and it's really cool handing it over to your wife because that's what makes me feel good. Here, honey, pay the bills. Here's $15,000 or $20,000 or whatever, it was pretty cool feeling being able to give your family that. So, but being over there, I love the guys I was with, like Steve Williams. Oh God, what a guy! Stan, couple other guys, couple others I didn't get along with at all. John Laurinaitis, just didn't get along with that fucker. I just still don't like him. Anyways, and I kind of got a big mouth on that stuff, so I got to watch it. But I just had the way I just had a lot of, I just couldn't stand the guys that were suck asses. I couldn't stand it. They'd be talking smack to the office about you, or in the locker room talking, stupid or whatever, and it just always kind of pissed me off. And there's a lot of guys who didn't pay a lot of dues, and they got jobs, and that kind of would make guys mad too. Not just me. I'm talking like Kurt Hennig and Brody. They were real touchy about it. If you didn't pay dues and they knew that you were there on a gift, that you got a job and you were making big money, and you didn't have to go down the highway and work for $50 a night for 2 years, and you didn't have to do none of that. Boy, it was not good. And I was the same way. I just did not like guys that didn't pay their dues, and they were getting pushed harder than me, So it was always that. And that sounds. I hope that don't sound too bad. I don't mean it bad. Anyway.
No, makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I don't mean it a hate deal or nothing. It's just I've been opening my mouth on certain things lately, and sometimes I'm like, I fucking ended up saying something about my buddy Wayne Bloom and his son, and fucking Wayne's mad at me right now. So I said something stupid on one of these fucking deals. I don't know. Anyways,
it happens. It happens. Was the WCW, was that supposed to lead to anything, or was that just because it was only for a short time?
There. Yeah, I'll tell you what happened there. I showed up there, and I was in the best shape of my life at the beginning. And that was like in October 97. And I was in the best shape of my life. And Bischoff came up to me and go, "John, you look great. We are going to push you. We're going to put you on main event and this, that, and the other." Well, one night I had tweaked my neck, and next thing I know, my left, or was it my right side? My right side was just atrophying, and no matter how much I trained it, I couldn't get it. It wasn't responding. So I started wearing a sweatshirt, in the locker room, and I would go out to the ring and wrestle. And as soon as I got back, I'd put my sweatshirt back on to cover it up. And that's things that guys don't ever talk about that much, is why does your career just all of a sudden take a left turn out of nowhere, and it just seems to just change directions like that, which was my case. And the answer being is guys don't ever like to talk about injuries. Most of the time, if you're injured bad, I was screwed. There was nothing I could do. My left side was falling off, And so Bischoff's like, well, I remember Arn Anderson, like, "John, why aren't you working out anymore?" Well, what was I going to tell him? I got nerve damage. There's no hope,
Right. Yep.
And what am I going to tell you? I don't. So all I did was say, "Okay, Arn, sorry, and then next thing I know, I think I wrestled the Barbarian on main event or something, and I was hurting so bad when I wrestled him. I remember my whole side was just I had no strength at all. I could barely pick them up and slam them. And then they wanted me to do this finish where I, like a Boston crab type finish, and I just was weak as a kitten, and it looked like I wasn't working out, but it was nothing I could do. So, and yeah, that one always kind of sucked. But I got to say one thing about Eric, and I'm not a super Eric Bischoff fan either, but one thing I got to say is he put me on 150 a year, and shit, I was working 1 day a month, 1 day every 2 months. So it was good money. Wasn't the filthy rich money, but me and Barry Darso signed at the same time down at the tower in Atlanta there, and 150 grand, boom. So you make that for a couple of years. It's pretty nice getting checks for 12 grand every month, so it was a good deal. But my body fell apart. There's fucking nothing I could do.
All right. As we hit the wind down here and head towards the finish, John, just want to thank you for coming on again. I'm glad we finally were able to get this done. Thank you so much.
Yeah, John, you're a good dude. I can tell. I like I said, I kind of feel better after I talk about this shit.
Nice.
Some kind of therapy or something.
Good, yeah.
But did you run into my son Joe?
We're texting back and forth. I think we connected on Twitter or something. Yeah. Yep.
Did you? Okay. Yeah, I couldn't figure out how you. That's what I thought you said, but yeah, I'm glad. That makes me feel good. I'm gonna. But you know what? Joe says something like, "Yeah, I can tell he's a pretty good dude." So that's why I did it. Otherwise, as much as you paid me, it was really quite pleasurable getting that paid that much, John.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'm just joking. I'm having fun. But no, yep. I did it for pocket. You did me a favor. I'm glad things are going. Hey, John, too, I want to tell you, in the future, if you ever need anything from me, or if you ever know I'm out your way and doing one of these deals, because I am going out to New Jersey in May.
Okay.
And if you ever want to stop by and say hi, just do it, man.
All right. Will do for sure. Definitely.
Or call me if you need any, if you want to try to get a hold of one of the wrestlers and maybe you need a little help from me or something and it helps you. That's what we're here for.
All right. Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right, John. Thanks for the talk.
Yep. You too. Thank you, man. Have a great night.
Right, buddy.
Yep.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.